On the Ledge is proud to be sponsored by True Leaf Market, the indoor and outdoor growing experts. If you're growing herbs, whether on the ledge or in the garden, True Leaf Market makes it easy as ABC to find the seeds you're looking for. That's anise, basil and cilantro, of course. Use the coupon code ONTheLedge to get 10% off your purchase at trueleafmarket.com now. True Leaf Market will help you get your growing year off to a fruitful start. Their easy-to-use website features everything from LED grow lights to wheatgrass kits, plus a great range of flower and veg seeds. So visit trueleafmarket.com now and use the coupon code ONTheLedge to get 10% off their extensive product range. You'll enjoy lightning-fast shipping and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. True Leaf Market, bringing the seed you need. And welcome to On the Ledge podcast, your one-stop show for houseplant chat, tips and fun since February 2017. I'm your host Jane Perrone, and in episode 92 I go wild with Hilton Carter, the legendary plant stylist and fiddle leaf fig aficionado, his is called Frank, who has lit up Instagram with incredible shots of his lush Baltimore apartment. And I deal with a geranium dilemma. This episode is only possible thanks to the support of all 118 patrons who pledge monthly donations to keep the show going. Joining them this week are May Trang, Jess, Doug, Elisa and Jennifer. Thanks to all of you for joining our happy clan. Find out how to become a patron in my show notes at janeperrone.com. Occasionally, someone bursts onto the houseplant scene who makes your jaw drop and your houseplant wish list go into overdrive. For me, that person is Hilton Carter, an artist and filmmaker who has, well, let's just call it a bit of a thing for indoor plants. As Hilton writes in the introduction to his new book, Wild at Home, my passion for greenery is uncontrollable. I was lucky enough to be able to hang out with Hilton during his visit to the UK last week as part of a worldwide book tour. I met him at North One Garden Centre in London, a wonderful houseplant haven that had us both oohing and ahhing over Hoyas and snake plants. You may remember that North One's creative director, Paul Holt, appeared in my episode on the Maranta Group last year. Paul kindly let Hilton and I use his plant-filled office for the interview. And do check out the show notes for some images of this incredible space. It was the perfect backdrop for a wide-ranging conversation between Hilton and I that covered everything from plant styling and the power of Instagram to race and gardening and why Hilton's mum was wrong about his houseplant addiction. Hilton Carter, I'm really excited to meet you and to have this chance to chat with you.
I'm happy to be here.
And my listeners are really excited that I'm talking to you today. And I remember looking at your Instagram account. Somebody told me about you and just said, "Have you looked at this guy? He's got this amazing propagation station. You've got to look it up on Instagram." And I was like, "Whoa, I've hit the mother lode here." How does it feel to be this houseplant celebrity that you've become? Presumably, 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't have envisaged this was going to happen.
A houseplant celebrity. It seems pretty ridiculous to even consider myself that. What I am, I see myself as is someone who had been sharing my houseplant addiction, I guess, earlier than others, right? As far as being a celebrity of sorts, I just feel like I'm just one of the faces right now of the community of green-loving folks who like sharing what they're really into. And then when I come into situations and I get to meet people who have that same care, that same passion for plants and talking to them, it's easily I guess something where you can sit for hours and just talk about them. I mean, even walking into this space, like it takes a lot for me to pass a plant and not spend some time either touching it or being a part of it. So I don't know if I don't think the celebrity part of it has caught on to me. I just feel like I'm just fortunate to share with others who also have that same passion about what I'm into. So
that's cool. Well, that's really cool to hear. And I noticed you're wearing a New Orleans cap. Now, I live in New Orleans and you lived in New Orleans, and I just want to geek out a little bit about New Orleans before we go any further.
Yes.
Because, was that an inspiration?
It was a real inspiration. That's where I would say my full journey started in greenery, was when I moved to New Orleans. Found myself in that tropical space, but had also the type of light that could basically beget more plants. So it wasn't until I moved there that I figured I should start bringing more plants indoors. And they really, the ones that I had, I got my fiddle leaf fig, Frank. I got him in New Orleans, and that kind of helped me feel more confident, because he did really well there. So it got me more. It made me more confident that I can bring in more plants. And then my shift to Baltimore, cut me down a bit, which then made me actually even better, because I think I'm moving through all these things, but as I'm thinking about it, I just want to say it's not just the moments where you're taking care of a plant and it's thriving and it's doing well that you can learn things. It's more so when things are going wrong is where I learned a lot, because I wanted my plants to survive. So I think in my transition from New Orleans to Baltimore, where I didn't have as the same sort of, I guess, tropical environment, but also not the same light, I learned, I should probably start doing other things to make sure my plant stays alive. It isn't just water and light that matters, so a lot of different things. But back to New Orleans, it is a there wasn't a shared space for me to find plant lovers like myself. That's something I will say, and even still today, I was just there this past weekend, and I had a book signing, a book event, and there aren't that many plant loving people there, which is maybe it's past its time, or maybe they're so used to having things outdoors and being in that sort of environment that they haven't caught on to the bringing everything in or talking about plants. But it's in situations like New York, here in London, so many people wanting to get together and talk about plants, because maybe they spend so much time indoors during the colder months that when they're bringing plants inside, like right now, like where we are, that feeling that they get when they're surrounded by plants indoors, like they just really want to, like I do, yell from the building tops and tell everyone about how amazing it is, and that others should be a part of it. So I didn't find a plant community there, but if you want to geek out about how awesome it is, I try to visit New Orleans at least once, twice a year, because it's just has a real special place for me in my heart, as far as like where I kind of gotten into where I am today, like into plants. But also I have a lot of friends there, and there's a lot of soul in that city, and I really enjoy getting back in there, pulling a bit of that into me, and then taking it back home.
Talking about influences there, obviously you're an artist, so you're coming at plants perhaps from a different angle from me as a journalist. Do plants, is it a two-way street in terms of plants inspiring you, and also art inspiring you in terms of your choice of plants and how you display them in your home? For sure.
I think the display part, or the styling idea, has a lot to do with the artistic side. I think the plant choice has always just been based on my way of me being self-aware enough to know what I can spend time-wise on particular types of plants. So I don't try to fill my home with plants that require very, I guess, 3-day care, like ferns and things of that nature, where I'm gonna have to come back and forth and water them just based on the number of plants that I have. Now, if I had like 15 plants, having ferns would be easier to me, because at least I would know that, all right, I can handle every 3 days coming back in, watering, rotating, making sure it's getting the right humidity, etc. But for me, I like to have plants in my home that not only just fit for the space and the light, but have certain sorts of looks about them. Now, whether that's texture, that's leaf shape, I like seeing those sort of things mixed in with the design or the furniture or the shapes of walls or textures in the house. So when I see that, that's more of an artistic eye. So some folks ask, like, how do you decide to do a certain plant in a space in your home? And I go, well, it's hard to break that down into like painting by numbers. It's more so having a keen eye to what looks great in the space, but also it's just trying to be unpredictable with certain things. Like when I come in here, I would have like seen the skylight here. There's a lot of different things when you have a skylight that you can think about what you can do as far as plants go. I feel like, honestly, the best type of light for plants has to be the skylight. Like if you have a skylight in your home, you can have any plant really thrive in that space. And when I come in here, what I like is which I try to do is create a space where you're not just seeing plants like just in a shelf, like on a plant shelfie is what they're calling them now, where you put a bunch of plants on shelves. But when you're in a space, while we're still sitting and we're in an office and there's books and things of that nature just all around, you feel surrounded by greenery enough where you can then call this almost an indoor jungle, because there's plants at every level. Above you, below you, next to you. So it's like you're in, like if you were in a jungle, it would be exactly the same way. If you were in a park, if you were at the conservatory, that's the way I feel when I walk into a space like that. Like if I was at the conservatory and I walk in and I see like, oh my goodness, like from head to toe or from above and below, there's so much greenery hitting you all over. That's how I want to come at it in my home. And I love being in spaces that have that same feel. So here it's like perfect. Like this is the perfect spot to do a podcast. This is the perfect spot to eat a meal. The perfect spot to work on whatever you want to work on. You know, like I feel like they've hit it on the head. Like it's just, this is, to me, like this is in line with when you say you're a brand, like this is in line with my brand. Hardwood floors, textured, painted, nice frosted glass windows that not only apply the shadow of greenery when the light hits. You can see like the little dancing of greenery outside the windows, but also is perfect for that bright and direct light that you need for a lot of plants to thrive, not a harsh sun. So it's, I don't know, like I feel at home.
Well, that's really good. I'm glad that we've managed to meet here at North Lawn Garden Centre, because I hadn't been here before, and I knew Paul, and I've met Paul. I knew that he did fantastic stuff, so I was in no doubt about that. Yeah. But this has surpassed my expectations.
I've never heard of this place. I mean, this is my second time in London, but I haven't seen any nurseries that have just even a moment like this. To know that where we are right now is just a back office is like, yes. Why aren't all the guests able to see setups like this? That's how I feel like if I had a plant shop. If you know what, my dream would be to have a plant shop / cafe. Right, so what we're doing right now, I'm drinking tea and sitting amongst plants. Like this sort of decor, this sort of look would be it. Because, I mean, what's better? Like, what beats being surrounded by plants and being able to sip on some tea or eat whatever these awesome pastries are? I think what they've done is and I mean, I haven't seen a lot of these species of plants. I don't see in America, at least where I live, and the ones that I have seen, I just like what Paul has done. And I'm not sure if all of the pots that I'm looking at are sold also on the floor. But the mix of different types of pottery, I think that what I was saying, as far as the styling goes, that is what takes your space to another level, but also makes your space unique to you, right? And I think that's important. And I feel like here, they've done it really well. Like, there's just such a great mix of different types of foliage, different types of pots, different types of, I would say, stands, right? Things that can hold plants, things that can display plants. And I feel like, I don't know, like I'm in the perfect setting. This podcast could be a 10-parter of us just sitting here and talking all day about how amazing everything is.
I am happy with that. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the world of Instagram and the influence of Instagram on houseplants. And there's no denying, we don't have to reinforce this, that Instagram and social media generally, but specifically Instagram, has had a huge impact on houseplants, because, you know, we see that variegated leaf and we just want to have that plant, and we'll go out and Google it immediately and try and track it down.
For sure.
In terms of your own Instagram feed, how do you go about getting inspiration for that? Because, you know, you're posting regularly. Mm-hmm. Is it just like, oh, I snapped this today? Or do you have a more kind of structured way of thinking about, well, I haven't shown people this particular angle yet, or I haven't told people about this technique?
I think I just go about it in a way where I'm thinking more so about the space itself and like what gets me excited. So when I first entered into Instagram, when I started sharing more of my space, I thought, well, what do I tend to gravitate towards, or what makes me excited? What makes me stop in the swipe session where you just swipe, and you're looking through? What holds me for a moment and allows me to take in what the image is and decide to either like it or comment on the post? And I think a lot of that is what I thought about or think about now when I'm posting is what will pull you or stop you from that continuous swipe and make you want to either, for one, read the caption and get an idea of what I'm trying to share, but also just like what is necessary at the moment. So a lot of the things that I tend to post about end up being comments made from other posts. Like some folks will, or comments sent to me or questions sent to me via DMs, where people ask about a certain plant that I have in my home or how they care for it and things of that nature. So I'll think about that and I'll try to provide that value in my next post. Okay, so now we have a monstera. How are we going to take care of that, or propagating a monstera? Many have asked about that. All right, let's share that in the next post. Or in general, like what's the look of the space? And I know that sharing a wider shot of a space will lead to more likes, just based on the fact that people want to see more. They want to understand an entire space together, not just small little vignettes or details that you can only pull just a bit from. People want to understand how they can grasp an entire space and how they can move things around. So when you're looking, I guess with a broader eye, there's more there for you to take in. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's what do I want the viewer to see, and what do I want the caption, the voice of what I'm trying to present in the image, what do I want to say about it? Mm. So a lot of it is how should you go about styling a hallway in your home that may be connected or across from a really large window. Everyone doesn't have the ability or the funds, the means to have a green wall, living wall in their home. Why not make a wall full of propagations, like cuttings? That's a cheaper way to, for one, increase your plant family, right? But also it is forever a work in progress. And it looks pretty cool. So this is what I did. Maybe you could try the same thing in some sort of way. I don't know. Like, I feel like Instagram has opened the door for a lot of different types of, I would say, mediums or fields for folks to, whatever their passion is, they can just share it with a community that exists for them there. And I think what happens in our space, in the green space, is that you get to see, like, I've seen some of these plants, but I've never seen them in nurseries in Baltimore or wherever I go to shop. But I've seen so many different plants from across the world that then you can either ask about, or you can talk to someone about, and maybe they can bring it in. But I feel like that, to me, is what makes Instagram so special, is because there was a moment, I don't know how long you've been into plants, but about 5 years ago when I first was like, this is it, this is what makes me feel good, and I'm going to start bringing more plants in, where I was just like, I was the odd one in my friend group, you know? I was the only one, like, and they were like, what are you doing? My mom, like, I love this about my mom so much, because I love basically to make her feel bad about this one thing she said to me, and this was probably about 3 years ago. She walked into my home just like this, and she was like, you might have too many plants. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna like that. Like, you might want to cut back on all the plants. And I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. To me, it didn't make any sense. Now I have a book and all this other, like you say, plant celebrity, whatever. And my mom just, her face, like whenever I mention what she said, she goes, you know what? Like in so many other cases where I'm a parent, I'm your mom, I'm trying to look out for you, I say what I want to say I feel like, because I know. And you've proven me wrong. You've proven me right. But no, you've proven me wrong before, and this is just another situation. And I feel like that's the thing. Like right now, it has made it so that Instagram has made it so that you find your tribe, right? All of us are all excited about it, and it makes you more excited to even share that. So like when I come to like signing events, or if I do workshops wherever I go, it's interesting to just sit with all of the like-minded individuals who are all in the same mindset as far as plant care and plant parenthood and whatever you want to call it. We share that passion, and I feel like that is why it's been such a trend, right? Like it's been such a huge trend via social, because there's literally people like sharing something that they are truly in love with, like putting it out there. And I think you can read that honesty in people's posts, and you can see it and feel it when you walk into spaces where, like, I was talking to someone about like the trend of yoga. Like yoga became a trend where everyone like, I gotta do yoga, or your friends are trying to push you onto yoga. While some like myself who have taken up those offers and gone into a yoga studio and tried to do some of the things those folks were doing, I've left out and just been like, it was cool, but it's not for me. But there's not one single person who lives on this planet who can walk into a greenfield space and not say, there's something about this that feels so much better than if you strip this room of plants and there was no plants, it definitely feels a lot better with plants. And and there's the power of having greenery indoors or being surrounded by greenery is undeniable. So I feel like it's an easier thing to say you are obsessed with, or you're a hoarder of. If you're going to be a hoarder of anything, I prefer it be plants rather than cats, rather than books, rather than all these crazy things that can cause, I guess, an issue in your space. I think plants is probably the one thing that I'm like, you're bringing in more life that is going to make you feel a lot better.
We'll be hearing more from Hilton after the break, but now let's hear from the other sponsor for this week's show. This week's On the Ledge is supported by Growth Technology, the nutrient company that helps your houseplants thrive. Looking for fertilisers and potting mixes that suit your plants can be a minefield, but Growth Technology's range of products make it easy to care for everything from citrus to orchids. Their specialist compost takes the stress out of repotting houseplants, and I love using cactus and succulent feed from Growth Technology, which helps me know that my plants are getting just the right nutrients throughout the growing season. That's because Growth Technology's fertilisers contain all the essential nutrients for healthy, vigorous growth and are enriched with seaweed and humic acid to support long-term soil fertility. Visit Growth Technology's website, focusonplants.com, that's focus-on-plants.com, for loads of great houseplant advice on everything from repotting a Cambria orchid to keeping bonsai happy indoors. You'll find Growth Technology's products available online and in many good garden centres and nurseries across the UK. So, choose Growth Technology for happy, healthy houseplants. I have been into plants since I was 5.
Oof.
I'm now 45.
I love it.
I've waited a lot of years to not be the person where people are going, what? Why have you got all those plants? Suddenly, about 3 or 4 years ago, the reaction changed from what to like, ooh, hey, can I have a cutting of that Hoya? Where do you get that string of beads from?
Yeah.
You know, and that for me is like you. It's just so exciting not to be the person that everyone's going, I don't understand you. What are you on about? So that for me is wonderful. And I have had people say, oh, don't you feel a bit kind of bitter at all these kind of Johnny-come-lately people who are suddenly getting into it?
Of course.
I'm like, no, why would I? Why would I feel negative about people taking on this wonderful hobby and getting really attached to their plants and learning and growing through it?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I get that question all the time. Like, what about the people who just like jumped on board? Like, just jumped on board to what? The thing that I really love, like everyone's on board with, or like everyone's like, yes, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah. Like if you're just, I've been trying to bring you into the fold, right? Mm-hmm. I've been saying this is a great thing to do. Yeah. It would be weird for me to go, oh, now you want to talk about all these plants? You just got into this. No, that's what I've been selling you on. Like you should surround yourself with plants. You should, instead of which I try to talk about or preach about. It's funny, preach about. I was in that garden museum yesterday inside of a church, which is funny because I did do some preaching in there. The whole idea of like just like thinking like plants are props, like not treating them like the living things that they are. And I feel like that's, I'd rather someone have a genuine passion and care for plants, a living thing, and treat them like such, and go about their lives like trying to help others understand that and see it that way, so that people are caring for the greenery that they're bringing into their homes first, and understanding what they're introducing into their homes, instead of just like, oh, just grab a plant and put it in that corner because we have this photo shoot happening and blah blah blah, or we just opened this new shop and we need some greenery in here. Let's go get a Philly fig. But your Philly fig is in your dark store. Like that's not going to work. And they've reached out. I don't walk into spaces and go, you're doing an awful job with this plant. I have to take it. I've had friends who own restaurants who are like, hey, can you please adopt our plant because we clearly don't know what we're doing. And
they need your help.
Exactly. So I feel like it's. While some people I can see be a bit like, well, you're new to this, or you just stumbled upon this, and I never feel negative about anyone who's new to something and being on board with it. It just makes me feel like it's a thing. It, like you just said, like you waited for such a long time for your tribe, your family of folks to come around.
And God knows we need this escapism right now. I mean,
sure.
You know, I don't know what your politics are. I can guess, but you know, like there's stuff happening.
Whatever you're gonna guess, you guess right.
You know, there's stuff happening in this country that like do we need this escape? I mean, some people could level the claim. Well, you know, it's very escapist to be turning your house into a jungle. Well, actually, that's kind of a good thing for my mental health to have a space where I can relax, which is green, and I can tend my plants and feel, you know, chilled out. I'm quite happy to have that because, you know, in this country we've got political stuff going on that is driving us all insane, whatever our political views. So I need this right now.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, honestly, if that's what's helping you escape that, 100%. I feel like for me, it's like growing up in Baltimore, growing up in the U.S. There's a lot of, and growing up Black in the U.S., there's always a necessary need for some sort of escapism, right? So, not to get too political about it, I think for me it's just like whenever I'm in the time where it's care time, watering, wiping down, repotting. That moment is that's my yoga class, right? That's my moment to zen out and to escape whatever other things I'm thinking about, whether it's work, whether it's things that are happening in politics or society. It's it's basically a one-on-one moment with all the different plants that I have in my house, and I feel like that is, regardless of whatever was, if any of the Trump stuff was happening in the U.S., I think we'd still hopefully want to have all the plants that we were bringing in. I just feel like right now there's a uptick on the like plants are in the forefront when you start seeing things, and then it just makes you want that thing, like, oh, I feel like I'm being left out if I'm not on board with that train. I feel like some people are jumping on just because of those reasons, and I feel like just like in the same space of like people who are like really into like vinyl records, and they were like, oh my god, now all these people are coming in like buying vinyl and then acting like they're like whatever, or yogis who are like, we've been here for 30 years, and now all of you guys are building these yoga shops. At a certain point, just like myself, I was one of those persons, like I said, someone invited me to yoga class, I came in, I'm sure some people were like, who is this guy? And then I slowly faded out of it because it wasn't for me. I'm sure the same thing is going to happen for us in the plant space, where there's going to be people who are going to jump in because they see it as whatever it is, if it's a trend or something that their friend was doing, and they were like, oh, I want to do that too. If it's not for them, they're going to fade out. But then at the end, we're going to be left with all the people who genuinely care and who are still trying to fill their homes and create a space that they feel completely at peace in. And I feel like regardless of what type of climate we're all in, I think that'll still be a big thing. I know that I get a lot of questions about like millennials, and they're not having babies, they're bringing in plants. I'm like, cool. Because you know what, there's a lot of millennials or folks in general who probably shouldn't be having kids, right? And like whatever that is, but at the same time, like there's other stuff that, like when I was in my 20s, I was like, that's other stuff I want to focus on. And I want to, I mean, a lot of my mom didn't like it, but she was like, I'm focused on like trying to make a career. Like this is what you implanted all these seeds in me as a kid, and then at a certain point you were like, whoa, what about marriage? What about kids? Like, no, I'm already gone towards a profession and trying to fulfill a need to be creative and etc. All the kid stuff. Oh wait, and at this point I just have plant kids and a few pet kids.
That's enough. That's perfect enough. As somebody who has plant kids and actual kids, it doesn't always sit very happily together. My kids are like, well, you're turning this place into a jungle, Mum.
There we
Can't
go.
Move.
There we go.
Like, neither of my kids are. I think my son might be slightly more amenable to plants than me, but yeah, my husband isn't into plants either. So they're all just kind of like, oh God, Mum's bought another plant. Oh no.
I would say, well, that's if another part for your podcast would be, or maybe another episode would be talking about the difference in when you didn't have kids and plant care versus when you now have kids. You have something else that also requires attention and sharing duties, and not because for me, like I have that same conversation. Well, I have that conversation with myself as far as the care that is necessary for my wife, right? So not having competing affection with plants versus my wife. So what I do is I lucked out, and maybe that's why I married her, is that she loves to sleep. Literally before this podcast, the reason why we were a little late is because she woke up 15 minutes before we were supposed to leave, right? But we were a little jet lagged, so we'll forgive her this time.
That's totally excusable. Wow.
But she sleeps late on weekends, so by the time she wakes up, I wake up pretty early, so by the time she wakes up, I've already watered all the plants. So when she wakes up and she's ready to do something, I'm ready, there, and willing to do whatever she wants to do. So I make sure that balance is still works, right? So I'm not like, oh well, can you give me like 3 hours? I need to water some plants, and then we'll start our morning. That balance is still there, but I can sense, or I feel like once I have kids, it might throw a sort of wrench into what's happening, because I have so many.
I don't know how much to tell you, Hilton. No. How much to scare you?
You might say you should just stay with blankets.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a challenge, but it kind of forces you in a way to check your priorities and go. I mean, there's plants I just don't have because I'm just like that's not going to work. Maidenhair fern, you are not going to work for me because I can't do that. That's not. And my plant watering, I would love to have 3 hours to be doing it. And I guess I could get up really early, but generally mine is like, oh God, that's really dry.
Yeah.
Milk bottle of water on things. So yeah, it's kind of haphazard in my house. But I kind of adapt the plants that I have to suit that. But yeah, it's you've got to find the right number of plants for you is what I always think. So that right number might be one plant.
Yeah.
It might just be one plant.
Yeah.
And the right number might be 500 plants.
Exactly.
And that might change over time according to your other priorities, but getting that right is important.
100%.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, which I guess, I don't know, I'll be really interested to hear your take on this, but when I go to gardening things in the UK, when I go to the Chelsea Flower Show, when I go to garden centres, it's very white. I don't know how else to put it.
What do you mean by white? Like white people?
As in it's a white, like you go to the Chelsea Flower Show and it's really like quite a white dominated thing. And I just wanted your take as a African American on whether you kind of like feel like is there a strand of houseplant culture that is kind of, do you find that you've got young African Americans treating you as a kind of a particular role model because you're black and you're into plants or is it just like that doesn't matter because we're just all into plants and which is how kind of we hope it would be, but
yeah, of course. No, I don't
know if that's a useful point to discuss.
No. I think the black community in America, every time someone reaches out to me or if I go to a book signing, young black folks, older black folks will always say they saw me and they were like, yes, a black man in this space. Mm-hmm. So we tend to, black folks ourselves, like myself, we tend to want to see our voices, hear our voices, and see our faces in all different types of fields, right? Mm. So that you know that whatever it is possible for someone like yourself. So if any young black boy or young black girl, older black man, whatever it is, you can go, you know what? I can feel comfortable in the fact that I can have this as whatever, a job, as a hobby, because there's someone else already out there doing it. It's like being a woman and seeing that a woman can do all these different things that men can do, and if you're not exposed to that, or if you don't see that, then you'll never fully understand it, or you'll never have someone go, oh yeah, I can do that because she did it. And I think for me, like whenever I go to places and there's a black individual there, someone like myself, they will definitely say they are very happy to see me.
Just like a little silent understanding pass between you. I'm like, I see you.
Exactly. But I mean, honestly, in all of it, of course, it's there's a change in it all across the board. Like, even when it comes to, I would say the demographics when it comes to age, like, there's like, just yesterday when we were at the Garden Museum, they were like, we are so happy to see this age group in this space. It's normally just a lot of older folks. And any conservatory I go to that is having an event for me, they're like, we just wanted to have, we need younger people in here. The older generation is getting older, and we're not seeing as many people excited about some of these conservatories. Even the one in Baltimore where we live, there were so many people who had no idea existed. And to me, that's like, it's really sad. So showing others that the space is alive and thriving, and it has many different faces, skin tones, sizes, genders, like, which has been one, I guess I would say, has been one of, like, social media is a wild place to be. If you can end up in a weird, like, group, honestly, where you're being judged at every angle and people are saying just really harsh things to individuals. This family of green, we're all green, right? I guess in this place, everyone's just been so caring and supportive, and most of the times it's all different genders and races and age groups, and I feel like, to me, like, that's where I want to be. Like, that's the world I want to live in, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why it is, like, for me, like, any of these, like this tour, on the podcast, wherever it is, like, I get super excited about it because I know that I'm meeting folks that we do have something in common from the moment we see each other. Like, regardless of what our politics are or what our race is and where we grew up, we share something so deeply in common that we could sit around and talk.
Yeah, well, we're just going to go, oh my God, Hoyle and Yaris. Oh, it's really exciting to see that.
I've had this and I've struggled with it. Yeah. And I see that you have it. How did you deal with this? Blah, blah, blah. What do you, but that to me that breaks at least one barrier, right? That can then open the doors to other different things, right? If there's one thing that can at least get us to have a friendly conversation about one thing, it could lead to other friendly conversations about others.
Hilton Carter's book Wild at Home is out now, published by Seco Books. See my show notes at janeperrone.com for all the relevant links for Hilton and his book. And now, question of the week, which comes from Johnny, and he posted it on the Houseplant Fans of On the Ledge group. I wanted to share my answer with you here because it's something that occurred to me is possibly something you would find useful to know. Johnny says, I'm looking for some advice. I'm left with a fairly leggy geranium after the winter. If I repot it and bury it up to the bottom leaves, will the stalk grow roots, or will I just make it rot? I suspect, Johnny, that the plant you've got here is a pelargonium. They are often called geraniums, but that really refers to herbaceous perennial plants that you'll find in the border, as opposed to pelargoniums, which are generally, often used as container and summer bedding plants outside, grown for their flowers. Or there are also the scented leaves geraniums, which are grown for their beautiful leaves, and both are often grown as indoor plants too. But after the winter, they can look pretty miserable. And I can see where you're getting the idea from, Johnny, of burying the stem so that the plant increases its root ball. Unfortunately, that's not something that will work for a pelargonium. It will work for certain plants. For example, tomato plants. If you're transplanting a tomato plant to a bigger pot or indeed into the ground, you can bury that stem right up to the first set of leaves, and that way the stem will then produce lots of extra roots and give you a really good root system, which will be good if you have problems with watering and find that your plant needs to deal with dry conditions. A geranium, or rather a pelargonium, though, will not do this. So the way that you've suggested, Johnny, isn't going to work. What I would suggest doing is having a look at your plant and waiting until it's in active growth, and then cutting each stem just above a leaf node with a sharp cut so that you're leaving a reasonable amount of foliage on there, but you're taking off a lot of the leggy growth. And this should really encourage a real explosion of new growth to your plant. Once that explosion of new growth has started, that's a good time then to repot and give it some fresh compost and see how it does. With most houseplants, it is wise to keep the soil level the same when you repot, and not allow the crown of the plant or the stem of the plant to go under the ground, because generally plants have different adaptations for their above soil and below soil botany, so they won't particularly like being shoved under the surface for the parts that are generally used to being above the surface. As I say, there are exceptions like the tomato plant, which will absolutely love to be buried up to its neck and do very well nicely. But again, it's generally, as a general rule, keep that soil level the same when you're repotting, and make a note of it when you take the plant out of its pot so that you can get that right, because that's a really common reason for plants to rot when they are stuck in moist compost where they don't like to be under the ground. I really hope that helps, Johnny, and your pelargonium is putting on a nice bit of bushy growth before long. If you've got a question for On The Ledge Podcast, I'd love to hear from you. ontheledgepodcast@gmail.com is the place to be. Or, of course, you can post questions to the On The Ledge Facebook group, and oftentimes my very knowledgeable band of listeners will have the answer when I don't know the answer to a question. So do go and check out that resource if you haven't yet joined. That's it for episode 92. I'll be back next week with an interview with a carnivorous plant legend, Peter D'Amato. Thanks to Hilton Carter and to our sponsors this week, Growth Technology and True Leaf Market. See you next week. Bye! The music featured in this week's episode is Roll Jordan Roll by the Joy Drops, An Instrument the Boy Called Happy Day Gakana by Samuel Corwin, and Overthrown by Josh Woodward, with advertising music from the Heftone Banjo Orchestra, featuring the tracks Dill Pickles and Whistling Rufus. These are all licensed under Creative Commons. See my website for details.